So I'm Corrie Walker. I was diagnosed with bowel cancer stage 4 in November 2018. It's been 3 years since my diagnosis, and I was given a 16-month prognosis. But for my type of cancer, that's the average survival time for somebody who's got my sort of the genetic makeup of the tumour. I decided that I wanted to do everything that I could to survive and beat the disease. Really, I've never given up despite being told the sort of stage 4 prognosis that generally it's incurable, and so your time's limited. That's not something I accept, that's what the doctors believe and that's what the research shows, but I also know for a fact there are people that have proven that to be wrong, and why couldn't I be one of those people? So I decided to do as much as I could with my diet, with just even my mental state. I went and saw a counsellor. I didn't feel like I needed to see a counsellor, and it was very short-lived, and she felt like that I didn't need to see her because I do have a positive attitude, but it was just another string to my bow that I thought I need to do this. With my diet, I didn't hit the ground running. I think I did my first chemo. It's probably about the first 6 chemos where I would come home and have a cheeky McDonald's, eat whatever I wanted. And that chemo was the hardest chemo that I ever had to do. And then, at that point, I really got into the diet and started to do like a rainbow diet, eating lots more vegetables. I've switched my diet numerous times between being vegan, rainbow diet, ketogenic diet, just to try and see what suits me, really, as well as falling off the wagon now and again. But I've always generally, I'm eating so many more vegetables. I did juicing initially at that time as well. And I think as soon as I flipped my diet to being some sort of diet that included a lot more vegetables and less carbs, the chemo became a lot easier to deal with. The first round of chemo, my chemotherapy is in sets of 12. And I was hospitalised with a bad chest infection. And I think part of it was perhaps just believing that chemotherapy is going to make you ill. As soon as I switched to a diet and got myself out of bed every morning and was exercising, I found that I had more energy. If you go for a walk, I have what's called a pump, so it's called Fluorosil 5FU, so that's attached to me for 2 days, and it has chemotherapy going into you. And I think psychologically that can be, well, I'm on chemotherapy now, I need to sit down and relax, and I believe that's completely the wrong thing to do. You need to be out and walking, or doing some sort of exercise. I even used to put that bottle in the bottle of my road bike and go road biking. And it doesn't mean that you have to hammer it down the lanes, because I'm lucky to live in like a country area, but I just go on my road bike and believe that if my heart's going a bit quicker, it's pumping the chemotherapy around and helping me out. I mean, that's just in my head, but I honestly believe by staying hydrated and eating well and exercising, even if it's not going to change your prognosis, it's going to make you feel a lot better. And I believe that it did change my prognosis, definitely. So I've been eating lots more vegetables, staying hydrated, fasting before chemo as well. I've done a mixture between 48-hour fasts and 72-hour fasts. And again, I think the theory is that it protects your normal cells, so you don't feel as bad, and the cancer cells are deprived of sugar, so they're more vulnerable to the chemotherapy. So yeah, I've been doing that as well. And again, I think it's been both good for me. It's helped me feel better on chemotherapy. A lot of the time, because you're doing so much, you can't put your finger on what it is that's doing the good things. Is it the food? Is it the exercise? Or is it the off-label drugs? So I take metformin, atorvastatin, doxycycline. I can't pronounce mebendazole. I would take a few more now that have just been added in recently. Low dose naltrexone and a few others, hydroxychloroquine. But I don't know if I'm pronouncing that one right. But there's a few others that I'm taking. And so you don't know if it's that or the supplements as well. I take some expensive supplements, some cheaper supplements as well. So to give an example of when I went on to supplements and the off-label drugs, the first 12 chemotherapies I had were successful in reducing my primary tumour and the one in my liver, but the ones on my lungs, although this remained stable, they didn't shrink at all. I went on to have an operation to remove the primary and the one from my liver, and then after that, unfortunately, another tumour came back into my liver, and I had to go back on chemotherapy because the lungs were still an issue. But on that second round of 12, I think I upped my game on my diet more. I started my supplements and the off-label drugs, and sort of after that 6 months of chemotherapy, the lung tumours had shrunk, which they hadn't done on the first one, which goes against the idea that chemotherapy loses its effectiveness over time. And I know that it does that, but for some reason it was more effective on the second round of 12. So yes, that's my biggest success story with the fact of having these off-label drugs. That's when I started them, and so now I'm just starting again, and I'm going to be taking those same supplements plus a few more for this next bout of chemotherapy that I've got coming up, because I'm going back on it now for chemo number 45 or something like that, which is daunting. But I also know that in the past I've coped with chemotherapy really well, so there's nothing too much to be worried about. I've also set myself, like in the past, challenges on chemo. So I did 300 miles on my bike in 30 days. And so that was, that just kept me going. And then I also tried to walk to the top of Snowdon on chemotherapy. I didn't quite make it, but I got very close. And I think that's kind of really worked for me, just a reason to get out and keep going, as opposed to sitting around and thinking, well, I'm on chemotherapy, I'm not going to feel well, because I think you breed that negativity, it shows in your health. So I think you're just better off to keep going. Other things that I've done to help, the supplements I've taken is things like Bio Brand, lots of different mushroom extracts, so it's lion's mane, reishi, chaga mushroom, a few others, turmeric and curcumin. There's quite a lot of supplements that I could list, to be honest. Modified citrus pectin, CBD, a few things. I've got an infrared sauna as well that I use at home. It's like a sleeping bag, so I just sit in there sweating, basically. Not a nice image, I'm sure, but I think that's with anything, when you're doing like alternative therapies, I think that you do your research, and of course, because there's not that much money in it, there's not much great research done, so you can't be sure that it's working. But something like an infrared sauna, especially when you are going to be tired on chemo, I'm not always on my bike running around up mountains. So what was I saying? So on chemotherapy, if I've got something like an infrared sauna that I'm not sure, is this medically proven, I still going into a sauna and relaxing for an hour. And so you can pair that up with like visualization. That's something else that I do really, which I'm not very good at, but I keep trying. So meditation, visualization, breath work, and prayer, they're all kind of very similar and come under a similar umbrella. But I will try and, look up to the sky and pray now and again. It's very short, and I think my attention span struggles with meditation. And my new plan is to do breath work every day, because I think that's something that I could do, and especially since I have the problem in my lungs. So it's something that I need to get onto and do more of, and I believe it will have an impact. And I'm missing a trick if I don't get that sorted. So yes, I've been on chemotherapy alongside everything else that I'm doing, and I'm outliving my prognosis, and I will get there in the end. I've also had SABRE, which is targeted radiotherapy to the lungs. That was most recently. And it's mixed results with that. So it targeted 4 tumours, and it's brilliant at doing its job. It did its job on those 4 tumours, but unfortunately other little ones around it grew. And I think that cost £20,000 to do that. And to be honest, on reflection, although I'm glad that it's given me 6 months off chemotherapy and I've had a great life in the last 6 months, I've probably been a bit indulgent in my diet, alcohol, things like that. Maybe that's the reason why things have grown a little bit on my chest and in my lungs. So maybe it's time to get a bit purer and get back on the diet that I've been doing for 3 years, really. I say the last few months. I think it's time to get back on it, really. And my experience of health professionals has been really good, actually. My oncologist has been supportive of most things that I do. He doesn't say yes, they're not in a position to say, oh yeah, that's proven, yeah, definitely take a curcumin, definitely do an infrared sauna, but anything that sort of helps me, that's, you know, that they're up for. I also saw a surgeon who told me of a man who saw a nutritionist and an integrative oncologist and said that he saw this woman. He had a tumor. It was bowel cancer as well. And when he went to operate on him, the cancer had completely vanished. And so it was like completely gone. And he saw the same nutritionist and integrative oncologist that I spoke to him, and then I went to see him as well. So yeah, so that was just an amazing thing. So that was a surgeon who told me about this guy. And obviously there's data protection, but he put me in touch with him. So that's my story, really.